could turn your video on especially while we're working in small groups and having conversations. We would appreciate that. And mute yourself while you're not speaking. Use the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to speak. And we'll keep an eye on that to ensure equity of voice. And you can use the private chat for any back-end conversations, and be kind to each other. Remember, there will always be technical hiccups. And if you are having any difficulty, please email my colleague, Christine James McKenzie at cjamesmckenzie@JobsFirstNYC.org. Next slide, please, Ron. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick background check on where we've been, talk about where we're going today. This is our 7th meeting together, and we have been convening to proactively align data, policy, practice, and workforce and economic development, and build a community of practice and purpose among us, and all of us working in the green economy. And Jobs First, the role that we play is as a neutral convener and a facilitator to support you all, the stakeholders, in determining and deciding what a green economy network will be. You will all drive the network forward. In our last meeting, we had Bracken Hendricks from Urban Ingenuity, Evergreen, and a Roosevelt Fellow, and he's been working in climate equity for more than 20 years. And pointed out as a very good reminder for us that this type of mechanism is just the sort of mechanism that funding can go through with all of the infrastructure investments that are rolling out. So timing feels right. And we have Michaela Creeder, who I think is also joining us today, talking about with SBS's Manufacturing and Industrial Partnership, and she talked a little bit about the cleanup core, which we're going to get an update on shortly. And in earlier meetings, those of you who've been joining us repeatedly will remember that we spent some time identifying what we can solve for as a partnership. Today, we are going to set goals based on those prior conversations. Next slide, please. Jobs First 5-step process. I've gone over this before. If you want more information, you can go to our website. Next slide. So where we are in that process is at the imagine stage. And there's a lot that we'll accomplish over the next few months. But today we're really going to focus on exploring solution-oriented ideas with you in partnership. Next slide, please. So for this meeting, our intended results are for you all to deepen your understanding of the assets at the table, identify gaps, for you to establish goals of the Green Economy Network, and to gain an understanding of and consider various partnership models. Next slide. So this is just where we are in our process. The next slide, please. So for today, we're going to first jump into some timely updates from partners Kathleen Culhane and Tanya Gale on the state budget and the Cleanup and Climate Corps, and invite questions from you all. And then we're going to review our shared purpose and some sample roles that are common in other partnerships that Jobs First is launched and is a part of. And then we're going to review the previously identified barriers and what the Green Economy Network can solve for. And today you're going to cast your vote on what we're solving for. And then we'll have some small group activity of you building strategy around the priority goals that are selected. And my colleague, Roman, is going to describe some of the different partnership models and governance structures so you can really begin to imagine how this network will take shape. And then we'll get some action commitments together and close out. Next slide. So I'm going to ask you all, first I'll ask my colleague Amanda to put the link to the participant agenda in our chat, and ask you all to click on that link and make sure that you can access the participant agenda. And I just want you to spend 2 minutes scrolling down to the 3rd page, where you should see a table with 5 columns. and the name and organization of people who previously registered. You'll see your name in the table. If you didn't register and you just registered this morning, your name won't be there. So there's blank rows at the bottom where you could add your name. The last two columns, you'll see at the header there, is what I want you to spend a moment just filling in right now. And what you'll see at the top is define career readiness in an inclusive green economy. And then in the last column, it says to share a primary component of ensuring job seekers are career ready and have access to a job. So you could just unmute yourself if you're having any trouble navigating that. So for folks just coming in, we are in the participant agenda. And on the third page, there's a table with your names for people who registered. And in the last two columns, you're filling in, responding to the questions on the headers of those columns. And we'll take another minute or two for you all to do that. And don't be shy if you're having any trouble finding anything, just unmute and you could ask. So the prompt was to open the participant agenda. And if you're just coming in, you probably do not see the link in chat. So we'll share it again. And you're going to the third page where there's a table with names of folks who registered. And the last two columns have questions at the top. So by your name, you're filling in your response to those questions. And while some folks are still doing that, people who are done and back here with me in our Zoom room, I would love for somebody to share out their responses to those questions. So you can either use the hand raise or unmute yourself. Any volunteers? People still writing. I'm going to look through and find something that somebody wrote if you don't want to volunteer. Okay, I'm going to just raise up at one of these. So your definition of career readiness in an inclusive green economy. I'll pick someone who looks done. Disseminating the skills, hard and soft, for people to access sustainable jobs in the green economy, regardless of their sector base. For example, skilled trades, project management. I see people are busy typing. And for what is a primary component of ensuring job seekers are career ready and have access to a job. Let's see if I see one that looks complete. Employers that are actually invested in hiring entry-level candidates and offer opportunities for additional trainings, resources as needed. Do these resonate with you? Everyone's still busy typing, which is great. Keep at it. Okay, while you continue to fill those in, I'm going to invite my colleague Kathleen. Kathleen Colhan, the Executive Director of Nontraditional Employment for Women, who you probably all know if you've been joining these meetings. And Kathleen's going to share a brief update on the state budget.
Hey all, thanks for joining us here for meeting number 7. For those of you that have been coming along for the ride, really excited to take the time today to roll up our sleeves. So Tanya and I wanted to lead a discussion first, myself talking about opportunities that we're seeing, kind of the up-to-date from the state. And then Tanya, in terms of leading a conversation around, up-to-date opportunities from the city, including Cleanup Corps and others. So, some of my quick talking points to start our discussion are thinking about, the New York State targets to reduce emissions by 40% by 2030, by 80% by 2050. The state's also committed to using 70% renewable energy by 2030. These two efficiency and sustainability targets stand to create thousands of good trade careers and other opportunities, hydropower and solar and wind and building retrofit, to name a few. We also have been talking about innovations in the construction of system level sustainability infrastructure, like wind turbines and industrial solar arrays, as well as the more individual installation like heat pumps, residential solar, which should greatly increase the demand for workers to perform these functions, who will need the basic trade skills, safety, math, electrical, assembly, and other skills that the workforce development groups that we are all work with provide. So opportunities continue with NYSERDA, who has been a large part of these conversations with us, a number of ponds available. But then also last week, the New York State Pension Fund announced $400 million investments into renewable energy sources. And the week before that, Cuomo's office announced $3 million in electrical vehicle and charging station construction. And so those are some of the examples that we wanted to start a conversation with folks in this room in terms of what individual organizations or individuals are thinking about in terms of how to capitalize on these announcements. What we've continually talked about in these meetings is how to frame the conversation and ensure that these are careers, not jobs, and that they are serving those most in need. So we want to open it up for a little bit of chat here. What have other people been thinking about what's happening on that state level?
Hi, this is Jennifer Mitchell. Sorry, I'm in a car today, so my background is weird. Thanks, Kathleen, for kind of that overview. I think one of the things that when we were thinking about the agenda for today and discussing this is, like, I know what's helpful, and what I find helpful is like just making space to make sure that in this group, like, we're community building and we're collaborating, and if people are thinking about responding to things, often these RFPs or ponds ask for partnership opportunities. And so one of the things that I just think about is like this green economy network could really be a resource for people as they're thinking about how to respond or what they want to respond to, finding partners that offer complementary services or links, and figuring out how to make this forum like a way to have productive conversations or help people find each other to make those links.
Thanks, Jen.
We're also intentionally working to build on the trust. So there's a trust that's been established with New and Green City Force and the HOPE program, and certainly with Jobs First, but even as our three workforce development organizations in terms of trust that's built during this process of launching this network, and looking at ponds as a great example, and looking at opportunities to partner and then looking at pain points, driver's licenses being a big one of them. And so thinking about how we can partner on all of this, and wondering if others in this group are having those same concerns or thinking about ways to partner. It's certainly something that I've been one of my silver linings in this past 14 months, is the way that we have established trust and partnership in new ways as we were all looking at the opportunities ahead. Okay, I'm looking for who to call on at this point.
I would add to that in addition to partnerships within this group, thinking about how we can leverage our collaboration to form partnerships with employers at scale, or employer networks or industry partners. We had a conversation with the Doe Fund recently, and I know there's some folks in the Doe Fund here, about that challenge of that sometimes, we're all sort of from an employer or an industry network, point of view, sometimes we're small partnerships that seem too labor intensive, and we can't kind of consistently offer the numbers that they're looking for. But if we're able to sort of form a collaborative and can go and say, like, listen, we can offer you, a steady stream of workers between all of us, that can, address the concerns of, a large network associate, professional association, industry association. I think that could be interesting, because there's the money that's coming from the workforce, but then there's the really big money that's coming from that's going to come to actually do this work. And we want to be a part of both. Like, so some really big industries are going to be getting the money to execute these projects. And so finding out who they are and how can we kind of make ourselves compelling.
And Joanne, will you remind everyone what organization you're from?
Sorry, this is Joanna Larson with the HOPE program.
Thank you.
Hi, I'll jump in. It's Isabel McDevitt with the Doe Fund. And yes, that was a great conversation, Joanna, that we had the other day. I guess just taking a step back, because I personally am relatively new to this group. And I know we talked, I guess, maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago about some mapping of what we all do. And then there was the member survey or the member form that went out. And so I see Carrie nodding her head. And I guess, I think we have a tremendous desire to partner in the ways that were just described. I guess I still am really wanting to know who's in this group and how we all potentially fit together, and what our core capabilities are, and really just to get to know each other a little bit more, so that when opportunities do arrive, we know kind of what every group brings to the table. So just wondering sort of where we stand with that mapping project.
Yeah, so great timing. I will be sharing out a little bit later in this meeting some slides that are a result of the membership survey form. So that's really where we're going to look at what our assets are, meaning like in this across this network, who's in the room. We're not listing it out exactly by organization at this point, because after this meeting, the follow-up like feedback form will be like an opt-in form, basically, where agencies are saying like, I'm opting in to be part of the network. And so until we have that filled out, then, then we could share, okay, these are the agencies who said they're at the table. But you'll hear more about that later. As far as the mapping project, so I've been working with my colleague, Brian, who I see your hand is up, at the Staten Island Chamber, who has some experience with Kumu, to get us further along with, and if you weren't in an earlier meeting, you might not be familiar with what I'm talking about, but to move us further along with like a physical mapping project. So more on that later. Great question, Isabel. And Brian, if you want to unmute yourself.
So I have a concern and a potential opportunity. So the concern comes first. The first thing we're seeing is more and more. I'm sorry, I'm from the Staten Island Chamber of Commerce. We're finding more and more that businesses cannot fill any of their needs. You know, and not just in New York City. I'm reading this in other parts of the country. Atlantic City, you know, down Point Pleasant. They're predicting that this summer they're going to have nobody working at the amusement parks. They can't find anybody. And we're seeing that all across the city. Employers are really struggling to ramp up with the new reopening. They cannot find employees. So that is the concern, especially with something like this coming down the pipeline, but it also presents itself with a really good opportunity. So the concern piece to you is, can you actually get enough young adults to go through these programs so that the employers can hire them? And if you can, that presents a really great opportunity, because the employers have always been in the position where your programs are fantastic and they love taking some of your youth, but they always have an abundance of people coming from other areas. I was on a job fair the other day. It was supposed to have 1,500 people. It had 9. Wow. I mean, that is some of the scariest things that we're seeing. So I think it does present a really good opportunity if you can mobilize and you can get the young adults to go through the training programs. But like I said, my concern is that we're going to have these great programs. There's going to be an investment of money, and we're all going to have a very hard time recruiting and finding young adults to finish the program.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brian, for that. It's sobering, but also helps frame kind of the work we have ahead of us. And then to Isabel's point, and Joanna's as well, in terms of that's part of what we're doing here today, is getting to know each other better, mapping out who's in the room, thinking about how different ways we can partner moving forward. It's now time for me to turn to Tanya to talk a little bit about what's going on the city level. Tanya.
Hi, thanks, Kathleen. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I've been talking a lot about the New York City conversations that have been happening, but just to sort of remind everyone back to the sort of federal and how it's all filtering down. We know in January that President Biden, came very strong with clarity about commitments for climate investment nationally. And, with his fact sheet talked about 40% of federal investments being focused on underserved communities tied to climate. And so that was sort of the platform initially. And then in April, Senator Markey and AOC released the Civilian Climate Corps proposal. So all of us in the green economy have been thinking, well, what does this mean? How does this affect what opportunities are going to come our way? How do we leverage scale, growth, to Brian's point, pipeline, to take advantage of these opportunities? And then at the city level, since the mayor's State of the City announcement, there was a message around a commitment to create 10,000 jobs under something he's calling the New York City Cleanup Corps. And that is an opportunity that hopefully everyone has heard about. And it's, as I understand it, a commitment between April and December to hire up to 10,000 people in New York City at wages of $15 an hour in connection not only to, but primarily to city agencies, including Parks, DOT, NYCHA, and Department of Environmental Protection. So at the same time, we're seeing this short-term flood of jobs becoming an opportunity. There's also the question of how does this fit into the Civilian Climate Corps? And for all of us focused on green jobs and good jobs and pathways beyond the first job, how do we connect all of these opportunities? And just in terms of feedback, it'd be helpful if anyone wants to share what experiences you've been having in conversations. So one example I can give for Green City Force is that, like all of you, we're trying to create a pathway and growth for our partners and our graduates and our incoming members. And we are also having conversations about partnership and collaboration. And so I literally got an invitation from an organization and I had no past connection to, and they literally came to me and said, we have, through this Cleanup Corps opportunity, 100 people hired, ready to go, paid for, who we want to have partner with you in your organization. which was realistically not something that we had the bandwidth to respond to. But what I've experienced is that while many of us are being intentional and strategic, and everybody wants to be, we're always also trying to leverage the moment. So in this case, this organization had this pipeline of people that were paid and needed literally something for them to do. So I'm interested in just what experiences people have had in time to the Cleanup Corps, and what are thoughts about how we can connect that to a next level career path. We've had a lot of conversations with folks about potential ways to invest in that to grow our pool and provide opportunities for our graduates, but we are like wanting to be intentional, to Brian's point, like we don't want to commit to things that we know we can't be successful at. So how do you balance the ratio of taking these opportunities and building a pipeline, but also knowing you can deliver? And these conversations about this group sort of platform for a space where everyone can provide candidates for the jobs overall seems more and more like a viable solution. But I just love if anyone has thoughts or comments about what experiences you've had, particularly to the New York City Cleanup Corps, or others. Be great if you could share.
Well, I'm happy to share. Again, Isabel McDevitt with the Doe Fund. We're sort of in an opposite side of the spectrum, Tanya, in that, so our model is we provide transitional work in our community improvement project, which is a social enterprise that provides supplemental sanitation throughout the city. And our model, Ready, Willing, and Able, provides a holistic approach in terms of people who are living in our facilities, experiencing homelessness, coupled with employment and supportive services, including workforce development services. So in our community improvement project, we actually have work for people to do and can expand pretty quickly because of our model. And so we've been tapped to expand our services throughout Manhattan in areas that we don't currently clean. We are going to be working in our kind of population as much as we can to bring, added capacity to the Ready, Willing, and Able program, for people experiencing homelessness. But we will have a subset of people who we will recruit from Department of Homeless Services, other shelters. But I also think we're going to want to open that up to others. But our priority is first people who need the full program, and then second, people in the shelter system, and then third, anyone from the community. But to your point, Tanya, the way we look at this is we're going to have work for people to do in the very basic skills of supplemental sanitation for that period, which will more likely be from about June to December. I mean, the whole mechanics of getting set up is taking some time. But we absolutely want to be looking beyond December, and how can we then funnel people into the next level of employment? Certainly we have capacity to do that internally, but I think this does present a really interesting opportunity to not only partner, but also if infrastructure jobs are going to be, sort of in the pipeline. And also, I think really forcing the city to think broadly about how this really shouldn't just be a 6-month experience. It should be, kind of a runway to more. So I think if I heard you correctly, we might be in a position of having the ability to put people to work in that first step, but definitely would want to have conversations with organizations that could help with that end piece in terms of placement into either additional trainings that are more career oriented, or actual employment. I will say that in our conversations with the city, there is no expectation that we will find jobs for people after the program, but because of our mission, we actually, will add in that because we think that's important. But that is not at the forefront of the city's efforts right now.
I appreciate that, Isabel. And you're reminding me that many of us work very closely with agencies as a way for sustainable, pipeline and partnership in addition to each other. I know that Michaela's on the call. I'm not sure if she wants to weigh in on any of this, but yeah, I think more than anything, this has been certainly top of mind for me in Green City Force. And so I'm curious as to how much time and attention others have been, spending on trying to, respond positively to all this great influx of opportunity, because it's a lot while you're trying to, keep the ship going, but we also don't want to miss the moment. So, if Michaela or anyone else would like to add any comments.
I can share a bit, and thank you, Tanya. And thanks again for letting me, and I think my colleague Alyssa is also on the call and meeting. So it's true that the cleanup core was announced by the mayor, and the primary focus of getting 10,000 people up and working like literally ASAP. Doing something quickly at scale always has, as you all know, probably very, very well, a challenge if the infrastructure is not in place. And this is a situation where, the deeper meaningful work that part of this group is tackling on creating real long-term careers for the work in the climate industry is, sort of like it doesn't quite mesh with on the time frame level. That said, Alyssa and I, what we're trying to do, and sort of what I gave I think a nod to when I spoke to you all last month, was to the extent we have the role currently on structuring what would be a climate core, we're trying to use that deeper thinking and fleshing out to inform the cleanup core as much as possible. Given the cleanup core's intention is not necessarily real career development. I mean, it's really like way to give people some money. Let's add a few things. And the people who are asking for the team to add things are pretty open to what that is. The tension is time, and there's no resource to support anyone who's taking a crew or taking the funding to hire more people. There's no real money to manage the teams. So like, this is really very bare bones. And I know as a former nonprofit executive director, there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? Like anytime someone asks you to pivot really quickly, you always have some other costs associated with that. And unfortunately for the cleanup core structure thus far, there's not really much to say in terms of additional resources beyond just the salary subsidy. Which is not to say not insignificant. It's just, I know, you have 10 or more people. You need people to train them, to manage them, to oversee them, to work with them. And that's good, except this current moment is not well suited for that. So that's all to say that I know you all are very creative. If there are groups on this call, and I'm happy to follow up with you separately, or if some person can decide who can serve as the central point, that you're interested to learn how, if you have, what I would say the following: we're interested in doing, the city's doing this like today, meaning we want to see everyone who will be cleanup core hired by literally July 1st. So if you are in the position where you could hire former graduates to do beautification, sanitation work, where they're cleaning DOT green streets or doing things in parks, if you're in that position and you think you have, and again, have the capacity, because we're not going to give you money for capacity. We're only going to give you money for the subsidy of the people's hours, the crew hours. Then please reach out to me or through the network coordinator, just so we can get a sense, Carrie, maybe if you don't mind facilitating that. I'm happy to sort of get what you think your numbers are. Again, quickness requires you to already have an existing contract with the city. It doesn't need to be SBS. It could be through NYCHA, could be through any of our family members of the city, DEP, DSNY, we've got quite a few. And if you have an existing contract, there might be a way to like add on to it through this. And I do know we are looking still to get more numbers. But again, the type of work it's truly being out in the field. It could also be work with bids and working on commercial corridors. Could be like tree maintenance on that. Again, that could fall into the beautification category. So it's sort of open in that. But to your point, Tanya, like this is not what we envision for Climate Corps. if anything we can learn, you all can give, as well as you've done in the past, great feedback on what you think needs to happen. I will be working and in the next few weeks, we're developing a short survey, which, and Carrie, I'd love to talk to you before I send that out, because if you already have collected the broad strokes of what these groups are doing on this coalition, we may not need to do our survey anyways, but we're trying to get a readout on what you all are doing, where the gaps are. Because what you've just talked about in terms of partnership is similar to what we want to see in terms of broad strokes climate core. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to find a way to quickly scale you all up mindfully. And that's what we're trying to do, learning from you as we do that. So I will work with you, Carrie, separately to learn that, so we don't ask anyone to spend more time on this. But we're sort of similarly trying to get a quick read on who's doing what, with what groups, for how long. So if we do a climate core at scale, how do we just do more of that good stuff and give it legs being permanent employment?
Thank you so much. All right, that's excellent. Well, obviously this is a very robust topic, which is what I expected. So, you know, we're happy to follow up with everyone, and Carrie and team. We're all definitely eager for the next conversation about this. So thanks, everyone. Back to Carrie.
Yeah. Thank you, Tanya, and thanks, Michaela. Yes, this group that's been leading the work here is happy to serve as a point of contact. And I can discuss with you, I don't know if our survey will cover everything you need to know, but if you stick around right now, and Roman, if you could put the slides back up, just let me know if you have access. I know you were having some Wi-Fi issues. Okay, great. So I want to just take a moment to reiterate our shared purpose, what we've been coming together around. And it's kind of our vision statement, placeholder for a vision statement until we officially sign off on it. But we are working to build consistent career paths to good jobs with focus and priority on inclusion. I think that's on the next slide. Yeah. And Jobs First, I want to take a moment just to review, and I'm going to do it quickly because we could share this out afterward, and I want you all to get to see the data slides that we pulled. But I want to review the sample roles on the next slide, Roman. That, you know, Jobs First is playing this role of convener and facilitator, but you, the network, will own the work. And so I want to walk through some slides with roles and responsibilities that are just samples from other Jobs First partnerships. So Jobs First is an intermediary, and we play a role as support staff, particularly up until the moment a partnership launches and maybe gets a network coordinator. But we provide some leadership guidance, support for launch and implementation of the partnership, serve as a liaison between the governing body and all work groups, and work with a steering committee or whatever sort of governance structure the network puts in place to plan meeting content and provide logistical support. And then in time, most networks get a network coordinator to provide that day-to-day administrative support. Next slide. Most partnerships also launch some sort of steering committee. All partnerships really will have some kind of lead partners in the partnership that guide strategy. So some call it a strategy group, a steering committee. They are using information from the wider stakeholder network to develop and implement a service model to achieve targets and goals. They regularly lead steering committee meetings, offer strategic advice with a focus on partnership sustainability, and they are ambassadors for the partnership. Next slide. So something that's crucial for any partnership really is the work groups, or some people call them action groups, because they are action and results oriented to advance the goals of the partnership. They report on progress and make sure they are addressing and identifying any barriers that are interfering with progress. And then there are partners, stakeholders, or stakeholder partners that are working to achieve the targets and goals of the partnership. They join work groups. If they choose, they don't have to be part of a work group, but they usually are. And they share information, opportunities, resources with the partnership. And then finally, community members, and they could be businesses, they could be individuals, they could be really anyone, and any of these individuals could sit in any of the previous roles that we discussed, but they also are the folks who are utilizing the services of the partnership and provide improvement related feedback to the partnership, and also help to kind of spread the word in communities. So what does it mean to be at the table? This is, really leading toward that conversation. And as I mentioned, what the feedback from this meeting will be geared toward finding out, what it means, who's at the table, and what it means to be at the table is that you participate with intention, you are transparent, deliver on commitments. This process of partnership, we always say partnership moves at the speed of trust. And you've heard that mentioned, that trust and integrity is really key to the success and sustainability of any partnership or any network. You all will collectively be owners of the outcome, the people who opt in, who are at the table, and no voice or entity is more valued or less valued. And like I said, after this meeting, there's going to be the opt-in process. So getting to addressing something Michaela mentioned and other Isabel mentioned about the membership survey that you all filled in, we could go to the next slide. So we want to talk about today, what are we addressing as a partnership? What are the goals of this partnership? And when you think about the word goal, it's also often used interchangeably with result and outcome, to label the idea of a condition of well-being for children, adults, families, communities, and others. Next slide. So in our work today, we want to start where we left off in the barrier conversation and have you really just look at that as a resource. We're not going to discuss those in depth again. You're just kind of referencing that when you think about goals. So you'll see in the participant agenda where we will be working in a few minutes, these are all listed out. So the barriers for both client attributes and external factors. Next slide. The opportunities that you all identified. And next slide. So before you spend time looking closely at that in the participant agenda and being responsive to selecting goals, I want to just review the member survey. And 23 of you, whose logos that you see here, responded to the survey. And I think you represent 22 agencies. So next slide. In response to how would you categorize your business, organization, agency, or program, and we asked you to check all that apply, you see that we are mostly nonprofit workforce programs and businesses or employers, followed by city agencies, education providers, and then there were three that indicated you offer wraparound services, and 2 identifying as advocacy groups and 2 as coalitions. So I kind of made a mental note that not as many folks as I expected were identified as providing wraparound services when we look at compared to the special populations that we're serving. Next slide. So I'm not going to go through all of this. This is also in the participant agenda that you'll reference when you think about goals. But with 18 of you responding to what are your current services, programs, or hiring needs, there was a lot, which is not surprising, green sector training and workforce development with some specifics around internships, apprenticeship models, and employment opportunities. Next slide. Oh, that's just a word cloud of the keywords that popped out of the previous responses. Next slide. So for our group assets and infrastructure, according to the responses that we received, we had the majority of people identifying as employers And that's the green section there. So employers who are currently hiring. And then the next largest section was training providers recruiting for cohort, and then city agencies. And then a few people indicated their educational institutions. And then we just had a couple that were capacity building supports for training providers and wraparound services, and a few other things. Next slide. So the majority of partners in terms of priority populations serve young adults and people classified as low income, and then justice involved and NYCHA residents equally, followed by veterans and individuals who are foreign born. Next slide, please. It looks as though a wide range of training and certifications are offered, which includes industry training through workforce development programs and the entire associates and certificate programs that are available through community colleges. I think we had 1 or 2 community colleges fill this out. So that's everything that they offer. And then along with some apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs. Next slide. Okay, so now you all are going to get to work. And if Amanda can put the link to our participant agenda, you probably already did because you're fast. If folks can go into the participant agenda and go down to what was page 8, but it probably shifted with people filling in. So let me tell you where it is. It starts on page 11. Where you see assets toward a solution and goals. And that's where you see all of the information that I just went through in the slides. And you all are going to take, we're gonna talk about, take about 5 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes, I think, to review that information. And then when you get down to page 18, you'll see a box that says network solutions. And above that box, there's 3 red asterisks. And each of you get 3. So don't cut them, just copy and paste them. And you're going to be voting on the solutions. This is what we talked about with the how, why a network can solve for these issues. So thinking about the barriers, thinking about the assets this community has, you're going to weigh all of that information and place, you can put all 3 asterisks next to one of these goals. You can put 2 on one and 1 on another, or break them up. But each of you get 3, so there's no way for me to check that if you're making more, but try to stick to 3 and select your top 3 goals that you think this network should address together. And just, feel free to unmute if you have questions while we're working here. We're all just going to be busy in the participant agenda. But it's, considering the client attributes, the external factors, all of the assets that we have, go in and vote, and thinking about, how we defined a goal. So some key terms to think about when you do your work together, mainly the driver diagram, because that's what you're going to be working in. And it's a tool that displays the result going along with the primary and secondary driver, which a driver is a strategy or a component that are connected to achieving the goal. So there's templates for each breakout group in Google Slides that you're going to work in together for the next 20 minutes or so. And when you think about this, think about the goal, it should connect to a target, like something that's measurable that you could attach to that goal, and thinking about what, for whom, where, by how much, by when, something that you can measure. So as you get into your small groups, you're going to select a goal. I was going to kind of put them in each template, but I decided hopefully we'll have a mix of selections of goals, and we could confirm with each other that people are working on different goals. But you'll see 3 slides when you go into your breakout rooms and open those. And actually, Amanda, can you put those in chat while I'm talking? They're in our annotated agenda so that everyone has the links.
To the slides, you mean?
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, I have it. I'll do it here.
I can do it. Just let me know.
Oh, my chat's not working. Okay. Yeah, Amanda, if you could work on that. Sorry, it's not pasting for some reason.
The link to the slides. Okay.
Yeah, the link to the Google slides so everyone could access that. So there's going to be 3 slides in there. The first one is blank. And Roman, if you could go to the next slide, you'll see what I'm talking about. So it looks like this. You're going to put the main goal in that big box to the left. Then you're going to think about primary drivers and secondary drivers. And each of the slides that you'll work from also have the next slide, which is a case study or an example of another group that worked on this. It may be harder to read on the screen here, but you'll open it up in slides and you'll see what we mean by primary and secondary drivers. So these are, the strategies that are going to get us to the result. And then there's a third slide in your grouping. I didn't put it up here because it's also blank, but it's for you to fill in what are the work groups that you think are needed to accomplish the goal and the drivers that you put in there. So we're breaking you out, and there are folks who've been leading this conversation in each room, but we really want each group to kind of self-facilitate, work together, have somebody in the group volunteer to be the scribe and take notes, and we'll be in each room to answer questions as you're working along. But as I said, you're owning the work, so I want you to own this activity as well. So we're going to put you in breakout groups now. When you get in there, make sure in advance. Oh no, you can't do it in advance. I'll have to figure out how to send those links to you when you get in the breakout rooms. So actually they are in, sorry, I forgot. They're in the participant agenda. So when you go into the participant agenda, you'll look for the leader of your room will, you'll see who's in your room and click on that link. And that's where you'll be working. You're going to work collaboratively discussing this, and please pick somebody to take, fill in the notes, and pick somebody who's going to share out when you're done. And I will send you into breakout rooms now.
We're all mid-thought, Carrie.
I know, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Elizabeth was about to drop the mic on something, and I
know. If anyone was mid-sentence, please complete it, either out loud or in chat.
You'll never know what I was going to say.
Well, it seemed to be going well. I know some of you did not get nearly as far as you wanted to, and I am hoping that we can arrange for you to meet, even if you meet together for half an hour between now and the next meeting to complete these. They're going to be important toward moving the partnership forward. So hopefully we could arrange for that. If you were in a group and didn't get to record the names of the people who were in that group somewhere, please just complete that so that if we're helping coordinate that, we know who to contact. So we're going to move one section of the agenda to the next meeting so that you all could share out. So hopefully you appointed someone in advance and somebody who could give a 1 minute. Oh, Roman, can you put the deck up for me? Thank you. Group 1. If you could have a 1 minute share out on the goal you worked on, what you came up with in your group that others should know, and what are the strengths, opportunities for growth associated with your driver.
Are we group 1, Carrie?
Kathleen, yes.
Yes, we are. So Milka.
Okay, so what we saw here was that building employer partnerships and engaging potential employers was kind of like the main goal. And some of the primary drivers would be identifying funding streams to identify which employers are applicable. as well as identifying value for the employers and defining what these green economy careers look like to them, and also early involvement of employers. And some of these secondary drivers were understanding the talent and communicating to them what is the benefit of skills training, as well as connecting them with resources to help them green their business independently. Employers being early board members, as well as pre-apprenticeship programs and bridge training for people looking to enter this space, and also employers designing bridge training as well.
Thank you. Group 2.
I think that's us. Is that right? I'm going to try to do this from written notes because I can't toggle back and forth so easily. So we chose building employer partnerships as our main goal. And then the drivers relating to relationships, networking, trust, understanding the need of the people we're serving, and then how which employers are adapted and how to connect to them. And the mic drop was going to be around the case study focusing on the city's goal to fill these positions in the cleanup corps, and then how that relates to the career paths, that would be a perfect case study for how to build out employer relationships.
Perfect. Okay. Group 3, Zakia and Renee's group. Do you have a volunteer?
Can I volunteer someone?
Sure.
I don't know if Joanna or Ellie wanted to speak, but
I can speak, and Ellie, you can jump in, or anyone can jump in. We chose a slight amalgam of a goal. We chose as our goal to create more high quality green jobs, kind of going a little bit beyond the goal about defining high quality jobs. And so we identified we identified primary drivers as recognized criteria of a good job. So that would be examples of things like pay level, stability, growth opportunities. Mm-hmm. And the secondary drivers that we talked to that were that employers are bought into the value of high quality jobs, that there are laws or mandates or funding mandates to require that conditions are met, and an entity to enforce that those laws and mandates are, track accountability and enforce them. And then the other primary drivers we identified, and we didn't get to identifying the secondary drivers, were government policy and spending, access to training to help workers move up the ladder to better jobs, and defined career pathways.
Okay, thank you, Joanna. I'm going to ask for the last group to give a 30-second share out so that we could end on time, and I have just 30 seconds to say a few closing comments.
All right, Eric.
Yeah, thank you so much. And good discussion in group 4 here. So we talked primarily about disrupting sort of the established pipeline of workers through a couple of different ways of going about it, both by bringing up the quality of training and sort of focusing the training on the particular needs, as well as sort of exerting pressure from the top on employers through different sort of agencies higher up the economic chain, government agencies, banks, developers, things of that nature. And we also talked about actually using this group as a voice, a springboard for sort of saying what is a green job and is not a green job. So sort of heading off any greenwashing, and as well talking about what a sort of high quality, what a good job actually is. What does that entail?
Wow. Okay. It sounds like you all had really good conversations. I'm excited to look at your documents. And if somebody from each group can just email me if you want me to arrange your group to come back together, or if you want to take charge of that, I'm more than happy to let you, but you all have my email address. So I just want to let you know our next meeting is on June 3rd. We have an ambitious agenda for the next few months of things that we want to accomplish. The feedback form is going to be responsive to conversations that happened today, so it's not developed yet, but I hope to get it out by the end of the day today. And I really ask you to take a moment to fill it in so that we understand where you are in this partnership and your commitment to moving forward with it. And the rest of the items that I wanted to cover, I'll put an email just to give you a sense of what we want to do over the next few months. But I just really want to thank you. Oh, great, it's up there on the slide. So I want to thank you for your time, your thought partnership today, your commitment to doing this work. I think, you know, it really seems like we're in that moment where a preparation could meet opportunity. And, you know, there's a lot going on. And if we are prepared, I think that this group can be well positioned to be a force in New York City for the food economy. So thank you. And look for me in your email inbox.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye, thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.